Welcome to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast, where the goal is to improve organizations and serve students one leader at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Jochum. If you're a department chair in higher education or any type of educational leader, and you want to improve yourself to better serve and influence those you lead, you've come to the right place, because the best way to improve an organization is to improve its leader. Let's get started. So on today's podcast, we have a great leader with what I believe is an impressive and inspiring leadership journey. Today we're joined by Dr. Matt Seimears. Most recently, he served as the Dean of the College of Education at Eastern Oregon University starting in 2019, was then promoted to interim provost in 2022, but starting here in January of 2024, he will become President Matt Seimears, serving as the 13th president of Lower Columbia College in Longview, Washington. And friends, he's not only the 13th president in the school's 90-year history, but is just the 5th president since they joined the Washington Community and Tech College system in 1967. So Matt, welcome to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast.
Great. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here today.
Well, and I didn't realize until after reading your bio that we've worked in similar circles, and before we started recording, have a lot of the same colleagues, and it just reinforces that, especially in higher education, it's a small world, and also you never know who might be willing to mentor you, who might be willing to give you some advice. I think we both have a doctoral degree from Kansas State University, and so certainly have that in common. My listeners know I have a standard template of questions that I like to get at, but your story, your journey is so powerful. And I know that people want to listen to this, and it's not only going to give them great advice, but might provide the encouragement they need to keep going as leaders in higher ed, working with students. It might be the reminder we all need that no gift is too small financially, with our time, just when it comes to providing life-changing, transformative experiences. So with that, Matt, why don't you start by telling us about what I think is a pretty remarkable leadership journey?
So this will be probably the third time I told the story. The first time it got pulled out of me at an interview to join the Emporia State University group there in the Teachers College. So I didn't even know what a first-generation education kid was, but I guess that's what I was in high school. And I was told that I wasn't really material for college, or I call it not cut for college. And so, I should consider workforce as my options. And that's the kind of the counseling advice I got. I mean, I did have a background in workforce. I had gone to Votech while in high school, and then was in building trades my junior and senior year, where we built a home. And so I really didn't want to go that route, but graduation happened, and I hit the workforce where I was a MIG-TIG welder in a factory industry welder. And so I built and welded 3 things all day long, 5 days a week, and it was dust cleaning equipment for milling for grain. And so I built the equipment that this company sold to Nabisco. So get to work at 6:30 in the morning and weld all day and get out of there at 5-ish sometime. And did that, and I thought by summer, making $3.30 an hour, I didn't want to do this. I couldn't even afford to really move out of my parents' basement. So I had a mentor who stopped by my welding station one day, and he asked me why I'm not in college, and I told him, and he said, well, the weatherman's even wrong sometimes. And so he helped me fill out an application to get into community college in Wichita, Kansas, which was Butler Community College, but on the McConnell Air Force Base. So I did my own schedule and started taking classes and fell in love with it and really enjoyed what higher ed had to offer. And so I studied. I was a devoted student, and then I had a faculty member tell me one night in reviewing the final that I should be teaching that class. And I didn't understand what that meant. Later went up to him after class and said, am I in trouble? I'm not trying to outshine you. And she said, no, you're really good at this topic. You need to be teaching it. What do you do? And I told her, she goes, no, you need to go to college for good. So that summer, I loaded up a Volkswagen Rabbit and headed to Pittsburgh State University. It was a convertible Rabbit. That's all I could afford. And uh, and just remember pouring my heart and soul into college. And then I got about almost halfway through the fall semester and almost dropped out because I ran out of money. But there was an administrator there that helped me find a job, which gave me about $35 a week. And so I just pushed through college. And, it actually took me about 6 years to get a bachelor's degree. And so then I got and hit the workforce, and I did a little bit of everything. I was a teacher, elementary, middle, and high school wrestling coach in Kansas. Got my bachelor's, then a master's degree, and then got another bachelor's degree, and really enjoyed just acquiring degrees. And it wasn't until I saw an ad in the Wichita Eagle paper for an instructor position at Emporia State University and thought, should I apply? Why not? Worst they can say is no, and I applied. And then in 2004, I entered higher education as a full-time career and spent 15 years, on that journey. And really enjoyed Emporia State University, my time there. I had a lot of mentors. And that's really how I started getting into the leadership piece along my journey. And I held odds and end jobs when I was as a faculty member, kind of grants, and I was an advisor, and I helped tutor students, and I was an adjunct at a community college before going to Emporia State University, called Cali Community College, and then I was also a GED instructor, and I was in AmeriCorps, and so I did so many different things instead of just the same life routines. And I think all of those are little kind of caveats to my journey.
Well, very, very interesting. Obviously, I can at least relate to coming through the K 12 ranks. You said you taught, part of your teaching was middle school. You said you were also a coach. Just going to kind of skip around because I don't know if it's a theory, but a lot of friends of mine that are also in higher ed leadership that went through K 12 that may be coached. I personally think that having that experience when it comes to addressing conflict, getting people on the same page, I don't know about you, but dealing with student conflict, parent conflict, certainly what you had to do as a coach. Did you find that any of that, once you did get into what I call the formalized or titled leadership roles in higher education, to what extent was that helpful, or did you find yourself falling back on whether it was your teacher training or some of those experiences in K-12 as a teacher or coach?
One of the things you're taught through your teacher preparation program is being planned and prepared. And so an administrator has to be planned and prepared. And so you need to be planned and prepared for chaos, uncertainty. You put my son down on bottom at state, and he got pinned, and he was going to be the state champion. So then you got angry parents at you. You got to learn to be resilient. You put a different kid in a weight class that somebody's parents wanted their kid in that weight class, even though they lost some challenges. So you've got popcorn coming out of the back of your neck. You're booed. You know what it feels like to be in the wrong turf, and kids don't get all A pluses always, and parents that are challenging your grading system, and or if a student's on an IEP and the parents don't think you're matriculating them fast enough, and they want to get legal counsel involved, and so it's just you've got to be kind of very adaptable and agile, and so it helped me out tremendously coming from the K-12 system, then into higher education. I never wanted to be a school principal. I always thought that they just really take the chaos in a different angle. Teachers can hide, shut their door. The principals are in the front of the microphone and the news and things. But looking back, you're in the same trenches as the principal. And so I think that helped out tremendously, making me kind of getting acclimated to the environment of higher education.
So along those lines, I like to ask our guests, how do you define leadership? And to what extent has maybe that changed as you've progressed through your careers and obviously have moved into leadership roles of increased responsibility?
Steve Jobs said, if you want to make people happy, don't go into leadership, sell ice cream. So, I mean, if you could think about what that's like, that's the first opening gate into leadership. Leadership is, you're improving others, you're improving others and not proving yourself. A strong leader needs to have a mentor with many heads, and they also have to be exceptional listeners and not the type of person that makes knee-jerk decisions. They really have to be patient and calm and understanding, and empathetic and for every situation that you are as a leader. Leadership is raising the temperature in the room too. So, I mean, a lot of people anymore want disease, and I want this. I want an assistant for my assistant, and you're going to raise that temperature in the room when you start challenging what those wants are and getting the data to verify the needs to make those decisions. And then also, leadership is defined by you're comfortable with the decision that you're going to make as the leader, and you're not just doing it to make people happy or win others over. There will be not everybody's going to be happy with the outcome, and it's a complicated situation, but it comes with the territory every single time you make the decisions that you make.
So true. A lot of great stuff. I really like your definition and different kind of your framework for leadership. You started your official title, and the reason I say that, and I think you get this, is as one that works with teachers, I say if you're interacting with students, you're a leader, you're influencing them. So I'm always careful to say someone's first titled or official leadership role, because but you were a chair, you started as a chair, and before we started recording, we talked a little bit about that. uh, I've said this before, I have talked to college presidents, which you will soon be, who have been chairs, and they have said, boy, that's a tough job.
Yeah.
How would you reply to that? Because you've served at a lot of different levels now, and for our listeners that are chairs or thinking about becoming chairs, where does that? Did you find it to be? I'm sure it was rewarding, but were there some interesting challenges that maybe you didn't face when you moved into a dean or provost role?
Yeah, I didn't know I'd be on a podcast someday either. No, this is fantastic. This is fantastic because I encourage everybody to model this old Chinese. I don't know if it's a proverb or saying, but eat from the bowl, but always look in the pot. Keep your options open, and that's what you should do along this journey: is eat from the bowl, but always look in the pot. Maybe there's two more mushrooms you want in that bowl, and you need to transfer them over. I began as associate chair, and the way that this happened is they were merging departments together with my department, and so we started to grow the N equals number of faculty. And so the dean did kind of a call for internal applicants, and no one applied for a full year. And so I was like, whoa, because I didn't consider myself to be an applicant until one day there was a knock on my lab door, and there were two kind of mentors, and they said, you're applying for that associate chair position. I was like, nope, I'm a researcher. I do robotics. I teach science methods. This is my lair. Get out. They were like, no, we need people like you. You're firm, fair, and friendly. You're very open. People talk about your openness. You don't abuse transparency. So I was like, and I was like, okay, well, what does it pay? They were like, actually, it gives you this much more of a stipend. So I went home and told my wife, and she was like, you're going to apply. And so when I applied, the search committee fought the whole time across from me over the questions. I only got to answer a couple questions because they wanted to go in a certain order. And so this is a true story. So I got up, which this is true. I got up and walked in the dean's office and remove my name as an applicant. And he come running after me. He goes, no, 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 no. Just stay put. And so later, my department chair called me in and said, do you want the associate chair position? I said, did they pick me? And she goes, no, not one person voted for you. I was like, oh no, I can't do it. I said, I'm going to have to lead these people. And it worked out. I accepted it. So I did that for a few years until my chair retired. Then they had a search again, and I applied for the chair position. And so that associate chair position was managing graduate programs, and I got a little stipend for it. One course release, I think, per semester was it. Then I handled a lot of the what did I do? I handled a lot of the just departmental accreditation pieces and working with the chair on other duties assigned. But then when I became a department chair, I became a chair of a very large department. I think at one time our enrollment was 1,400 in that department, and we expanded to 42 plus employees, and we had more grants than I think the whole campus combined. And we had at one time 4 distant sites. So I managed a lot. And I was a chair on a 0.5 release, and that's it. But I was a chair full time, but I only got kind of the release time of 0.5. Now I got the chair salary. So I taught 0.5 every semester on top of that. So, I really cut my teeth on the opportunity that this is building to something with a really good outcome for me as a leader. And so that's how I began that journey as a chair. And there were some hard times. I mean, because chairs are between three hammers and an anvil. You know, instead of the provost, you're between a hammer and an anvil. You're between like three hammers. You're between the board, the provost, and the dean. Maybe an associate dean. Maybe that's four hammers. But it feels like that sometimes. And the anvil's the faculty and the department and the staffing. So that really was a really good experience for me, and it later led to me being a successful dean when I moved up to the dean role. If I was never a chair, I think I would have failed miserably as a dean.
That makes a lot of sense. I can't impress enough for folks listening that I always say the chair job can be one of the most rewarding, but at the same time, it's very challenging. The same could be true of those of us that worked in K-12. It's very rewarding, very challenging. Did you find, because you were accomplished scholar, accomplished teacher, one of my favorite leadership authors is John Maxwell, and he says leaders have to give up to go up. Did you find that there were some things when you moved into the chair position, and then maybe even to the dean and provost, as you, I guess the further you got from the faculty role into the leadership role, were there some things that maybe you didn't realize you would have to give up to go up, or anything along that realization?
Yeah, I had to change my trick or treating routes. I would say because they say you go to the dark side, so you need a Darth Vader costume because you become their hiring manager, and you're in charge of their academic portfolios and tenure and promotion work, and so you're completely different than you're at shoulders length in a meeting with them. You're leading the meeting with them, and so there were some changes. I mean, it was charting a new path with how I talked with people instead of at people, and then you saw a proliferation of people in human subject need. I mean, it's tough to balance the faculty inload when you have so many faculty that teach in all different dynamics and areas. And so a lot of people want their inload a special way, and some people want the junior faculty to do this, and they don't want to serve on committees anymore, and they don't want their service to be this. And so you have got to really learn how you manage interfacing with other individuals. And so I gave up being what they asked for, to managing what they asked for. And so there were some complications with that, but that took that took a while because I spent my first year hearing what the former chair did. They, they used to allow us, and they used to do this, and they used to do that, and that was great and all. But I had to pivot or position ourselves for growth and position ourselves for accreditation, and I'm not saying the other person didn't do that, but there was some new changes with a new national accreditation, Higher Learning Commission. In-CAPE was dropped off to CAPE, and so there was some stuff that was needed to be archived. And then you commonly started to hear, we've always done it that way, and why do we have to change it? And so it became letting go of how I used to manage change to having to manage change at a larger perspective, a bigger picture. I manage change in a classroom and my own tenure promotion portfolio. I manage that, and I'm managing it for everybody.
So that brings me into another common question I like to ask. And I think that this is when folks, and you've probably heard this, look at what you do as a leader, maybe on the hard days, and say you can't pay me enough, or I wouldn't want to do that. Usually it's in response to conflict, making a tough decision. And so, and I found even in my own leadership journey that I think the extent to which we're happy and we're productive is the extent to which we learn to address conflict, get ahead of it.
Yeah.
So I say leadership's a people business, and people are messy. And as a leader, you're the chief problem solver.
Yes.
And so, how do you approach conflict, especially difficult conversations? And what some advice you might give to those listening who maybe are still new or they're experienced, but they still
Sure.
are trying to get to a place where they're comfortable with the uncomfortable?
I mean, one thing that worked for me was gathering all data, the evidence, all qualitative narratives first, and then sitting down, or hiding where I can read it and getting into analysis mode, because there's two sides to every story, whether it's a situation between a student and a faculty member, or between two faculty, or staff and faculty, or faculty in the community. I had some rough goes experiences where I've had to deal with the KBI. As a chair, I dealt with the KBI a couple times with student misconduct. So I had to get all that data and evidence and qualitative narratives first. And then what I did was I analyzed, and then I met, and then I talked, then I moved the institution forward. I had to make sure that I was comfortable of making the decision to move forward, being willing. I had to be willing to separate shared governance and union or business at times. I always obeyed all legal and ethical pathways. And I had to come to kind of a shared understanding with faculty that shared governance does not always mean shared decision making, especially if it's a legal issue. And so sometimes shared governance isn't applicable if there's some legal kind of fracture that has taken place. And so we spend a lot of time as faculty in shared governance, but sometimes having to navigate that meant I was comfortable with setting some of that aside to get to the point of being the chief problem solver. Because I noticed my first few years as a leader that people still wanted to lead above me, and that it wasn't insubordination or going around. It was just kind of natural evolution in a department that took place of who's the leader and who had the pecking order and people making decisions. So I had to, be firm, fair, and friendly with setting my visionary goals forward. And oftentimes it was, here's my vision, and can you help me get there? And you'll see those that want to help and those that don't want to help. And in problematic situations, sometimes it takes more than yourself to push the situation into a successful outcome. And you don't get an Oscar, you don't get any trophy for it either. You go home at the end of the day. And sometimes it's those long drives that you're wondering, did I make the right decision? You question it. But you have to be able to stop being afraid of fear as a leader, as a chair, as a dean, provost, and president. Because when that stuff sets in, it's like the house of cards. It all can come tumbling down on you. And it can reflect on you as a leader of people.
Powerful quote there. Stop being afraid of fear.
Yeah, stop being afraid of fear. I read that somewhere. I want to give credit, but I thought I read it somewhere. But when I think I read it again, it didn't say that. But I used to tell my students that stop being afraid of fear. You're going to be the teacher in the classroom. And yeah, I had to learn to, be a very resilient person. And as a chief problem solver, you're helping others build fidelity in that leader partnership relationship too, because they're studying you, how you're going to resolve that situation.
So one other thing I'd like to touch on here before I get into what I kind of call the quick final round questions. I think we both have benefited as leaders from having great mentors. I know just some of the conversation we had before we started recording. It's very clear that you are a great mentor. What are some of your thoughts that you'd want to share with leaders? Whether it's the extent or the value in finding a leader, or as you become more experienced, maybe bringing others up as a mentor. So just that whole mentoring relationship.
Yeah, that's good. So anyone listening today, they can find me. Once a coach, always a coach. Once a mentor, always a mentor. So I'm always willing to help those in the field. And so find my email and say, or LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn like, Matt, I listen to your podcast. I currently need your advice. Do you have time for a phone call? Always make time for individuals. Become a mentor, even if you don't know them. You don't have to have this cookie cutter mentor kind of palette, or portfolio. And so I found success, and I think I saw this in the Chronicle of Higher Education after I was advised to go in this pathway, is your mentor must have many heads. And so I got mentorship from, faculty at Fort Hays State University. Paul Adams, who's the Dean of the College of Education, was a mentor of mine. He probably doesn't recall the conversations. I'd call him, and ask his advice in certain different areas before he became a chair. Being a first-generation education kid, I had no mentorship at home. My dad had no use for higher education, not in a negative way, but just you go to the workforce. And So I had to be really cautious who my mentors were. And so I had mentors that were in other colleges, at Emporia State University on other campuses. And so I really, really leaned on that mentorship piece. And then also lobbing back to the K 12 piece, you're a mentor of students and you're a mentor as a coach or a teacher. And so, I had adopted a lot of those different kind of qualities to expand my mentorship capabilities. And I also attended a really interesting Kansas Leadership Institute session that was being driven by our president at the time. And I really enjoyed some of the stuff I heard. And so I took some of that on as mentorship as I was a newer chair. And so I'm a really good collector of successes that I could share because I think if you become this kind of success hoarder and you don't disseminate that success to others, I mean, how do you help others in a hurting world? You should be your lifelong goal as a mentor to mentor people to help others become successful. And so I recommend people to reach out because there'll be times when you just shut that door of the office and you're like, I don't know if it can get any worse. I mean, and here's something a mentor taught me. I used to take students to study bats in Freedom, Oklahoma, and a bat biologist named Bill Kerr, he's a mammologist at University of Central Oklahoma, would come up and mentor my students. And one day we're driving through this desert area, and he said, "I heard you became a chair." And I was like, "Yeah." I go, "Look at us in your Mazda B2600 out here with sunflower seed shells on the floor, and you're living the life. You're just a researcher. Look at me, I'm crazy." And he looked over at me to his right in blue jeans and just covered in dust. He goes, "Did I ever tell you I was a provost? Did I ever tell you I was a dean for 12 years? I'm like, "I had no idea." And he was telling me some of his hard stories, but he had this article he always kept by his computer that when things got really hard, he'd read over there that Russian sailors were trapped in a submarine and reminding him he really doesn't have it that bad. And so that mentorship alone just gave me something to look, not a catastrophic experience, but is there a silver lining to what you're experiencing right now? And so mentors can help you navigate that from previous wisdom that you explored and heard with them.
Powerful stuff. I mean, we could do a whole episode with you just on mentoring because it's that important.
That's
So transitioning here, the final three quick questions I'd just like to ask
yeah.
everyone. The first one, what are you currently doing, planning to do, or hope to do to improve yourself as a leader?
I'm always modeling best administrative practices. So I'm studying people all the time. I'm reading what's going on in the Chronicle right now. I'm reading, I read the Chronicle a lot. And I study other leaders like superintendents and principals. And then I also study, just leaders in the community. And I see how they handle themselves with individuals, how they deal with cold calls, like you get cold called in a crowd. I was a keynote speaker last year 3 times. I'm like, who lost the bets to get me as a keynote speaker? I mean, like, so I was a keynote speaker at OHSU's nursing graduation, and I just used K-12 teaching kids with trauma, something I saw somebody else do and modeled that and gave them credit. And people came up afterwards and was like, "That's the most touching presentation I've ever seen." And I think because I saw somebody else do it that way, or maybe I brought my teacher voice out at the right time. And another time I presented was at an opening session here with students, and I told some of these leadership stories I'm telling you today, and students came up and was like, "Holy cow, wow, your journey is great." And I'm like, I never got an award for it. Well, I got alumni of the year somewhere, but I want to constantly model best administrative practices because whether you want to admit it or not, people are watching you. They're watching you when you go out to eat. They're watching you how you talk with others. They see where your hands are in your pockets, how many times you touch your nose. And so modeling best administrative practices, I think, is a very, very good, consistent opportunity for me to be a lifelong learner to continue for continuous improvement. I'm always looking for continuous improvement for myself and then modeling those as best administrative practices.
Great stuff. I always say you're never not, if you're a leader, whatever the title is, you're never not the fill in the blank. Certainly,
Yeah.
never not the president of a
Yeah,
college. You're never not the
yeah.
provost. You're um, probably same when you were a coach. You were never not the wrestling coach.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's sometimes the parents. I one time went over and got popcorn and was eating it in the corner, and the kid's like, "Are you going to coach me?" I'm like, "No, you watch your dad." In the crowd, and he was like, "No, okay, I'll stop." I was like, "All right, when you're ready for me to be your coach, I'll be your coach." You know, because he kept watching his dad the whole time, and I was like, "If you want your dad to coach you, I got another seat right here."
Next question I like to ask, if you were forced to take a free day to do whatever you wanted, but it couldn't in any way involve work, your current job, future job, but it couldn't be related to your profession, what would you do?
Oh, I would blacksmith. I do blacksmithing, and so my great grandfather was the blacksmith of Fall River, Kansas, and so I would do that. It's so practical. It's like you're an alchemist, and it's just you and that work, and you can just unplug and do that. Or I'd go back to coach wrestling or college rugby. I coached the Emporia State University rugby team for less than a decade, and I enjoyed that because the coaching rugby. I guess I should say helped me get away from the administration piece at Emporia State University. I could just leave those problems aside and then coach college kids in on the rugby team, and so that was very relaxing for me. And you've got to learn to do these things because I have to do it now because otherwise I'll just work all the time. I mean, because work will constantly find you and constantly pull you into it. I mean, it's kind of an addiction because you can keep doing more in higher ed. You give yourself permission to be creative, like Ethan Hawke said on a TED Talk. I mean, you can do that in higher education. So you got to find those life balances. So I would blacksmith, coach wrestling, or coach rugby.
Finally, any bits or parting advice or words of wisdom for chairs, directors, or other mid-level positions in higher ed who want to improve their organizations by improving themselves as leaders?
Yeah, this I've shared this for years. Easy never made you change, and easy never made you better. And I used to tell my future teachers also, what you permit, you promote. If you permit yourself to talk about people in the hallway behind their backs, then you'll promote it. Permit yourself to just constantly be hard on yourself, then you'll promote it. So what you permit, you promote too. And then I often share this old, I think it's a Chinese saying that, you need to eat what's in the bowl while looking in what's in the pot. So pretty much keep your options open. Always keeping your options open. Keep that cover letter looking, polished. Becoming this next president at Lower Columbia College, one of the things I wasn't doing was really pouring my heart and soul into the cover letter like I should have been. I thought I did for the dean position here, and I did. But that continuous improvement, keeping your options open, because you might think, oh, I'm just a chair, or I'll always be an associate chair. No, there's associate dean, assistant dean, deans, associate vice presidents, presidents, senior academic officers that you need to look down the road. And so when I moved into the dean position, because I was a chair, I was highly successful. And I hit the ground running right away. I never went home feeling like I don't know what I'm doing here. I knew way more than I probably should have known as a neophyte first year dean. And so that chair role was an amazing experience for me to really just jump right in and lead that college forward. And we moved fast. I mean, we got accreditation quick, and we brought in millions of dollars in grants, and we became the lead in the Pacific Northwest for rural schools. We became top in dyslexia work. And so I would not have been able to do what I did and been visionary if I wasn't a chair or an associate chair previously. And then when I came to a labor friendly state from a right to work state, I had to deal with grievances differently. I had to deal with arbitrations. I had to deal with collective bargaining agreements and contracts. And so having that previous administrative experience saved a lot of gray hair.
Well, Matt, I thank you so much. Lower Columbia College certainly getting a great leader. So much good stuff in here that I know if you haven't already, first time through listeners, you're going to want to go back through. I always say, however you take notes, most of it's on your phone now. You're going to want to take some notes. You're going to want to mark this because lot of words of wisdom dropped here that I don't care what level of leadership you're in. Hopefully we have some K-12 educators listening, and very applicable as well. So Matt, Dr. Seimears, soon to be President Seimears, thank you so much for joining us today on the Department Chair Leadership Podcast.
And I'll part with this, Chris, you're doing a great job with this podcast, because I would have listened to it as a chair or wanting to be a chair. I just went into it. So I think hearing from the field is fantastic, because, you need as much help as you can get. And you want to be successful. You want other people to be successful. And higher education is a mess, but that's what makes it so great. Trust me. I mean, it's not a negative mess, but that's what makes it so great. Anything to help, reach out to me, send me a message. Hey, I heard your podcast. Give me some advice here. Anything to help out anyone I can.
All right. Well, many thanks. And hey, thanks again, friends, for listening. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. So I wish you well, and we'll see you next time. Hey, real quick, just wanted to give you Chris's Corner some final follow-up takeaways and maybe a few words of wisdom and questions to send you forward until next time. I hope you enjoyed listening to Dr. Matt Seimears, President Seimears. Here's a word that really, really resonated with me, and that is resiliency. He said, leaders must continue to study and model best leadership practices. I always say that leaders are learners. So just gonna help you here. What are you doing almost each day to become a better leader? Because remember, the extent to which you improve your organization and move people forward is in direct proportion to the extent to which you are improving yourself as a leader. So I want to encourage you to continue to do things such as listen to this podcast to make yourself and those you serve better. The other thing, stop being afraid of fear. What is holding you back? Matt said, easy never made you change, and easy never made you better. Remember, leadership is a calling. It's a people business, and we have to do things that are scary, that pose fear. But hey, as a leader, you're not the only person for whom you're responsible. And if we don't step up, you know what we do, whether we realize it or not? Listen here, leaders, you either step up or you step aside. So come on, be the leader you are meant to be. Be the leader your organization needs. Step up, be resilient, and continue to grow and get better as a leader. Till next time, friends. Thank you for listening to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. If you want to learn more about my leadership philosophy and how to be an effective chair, please consider my book, The Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership. You can find this and learn more about me by going to cjleadership.com. Also, please be sure to like this podcast, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. Thanks again for improving your organization and those you serve by improving yourself. Take care.